Hey guys, so in this video all we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at firing enemy projectiles and adding a new type of enemy. Okay, so that also fires enemy projectiles. Now the thing that we are most concerned about, or the thing that we left off from our other video, is we pretty much added all the logic in there to fire the projectiles. So in their path planning, what they do is when they need to fire a projectile, they're actually just going to stop for a second, and you can see the pause, and it's literally just for like a second. And this one isn't really showing it, but if we look up here, and right here we see that this guy is firing a projectile, then he's going to be moving on, and so we're going to make that projectile happen, and from there we're just going to go on and create that other enemy. Okay, so what will this look like at the end of this video? Well, at the end of this tutorial, what you're going to do is you're going to have a projectile just like that, and our shield is going to be able to stop it, and it's going to make a little clinking sound, but it's also going to be able to do damage if we're actually facing away from it. Okay, so let me see if I can get the clinking sound right here. Oops, went right through me. May have to go back and look at the collision code for that, but here we go. Alright, made the clicking sound, and otherwise if it hits us in the back or whatever, or in the side. Come on, dudes. There we go. I ran into one. And so yeah, that's exactly what we're going to be doing. And then if we come over here and look at, I forget what these little water monsters are called, but basically we're just going to be doing that. In the final code, I think I actually get rid of the projectile. It's not that big of a deal, but if not, I know it's in the next tutorial that's coming. And so yeah, this is pretty much it. And we're going to look at the math behind that, and we'll go from there. Okay, so let's go ahead and get right to it. Okay, so this is our code from where we were at on the last tutorial, and what we're going to do is we're going to need to add some new variables, and so they're going to be right here, just right after can attack again. We are going to set up a couple of variables called link needs to bounce. Now we're not going to set up the logic for the bouncing of Link, like when he gets hit by an enemy he should like get propelled in a certain direction. We're not going to do that this time, but we do need that going forward to make some things work. Just because the way I've done the tutorials, basically I built out the game to a certain point, and I have gone through the game code to find out chunks that would fit well into a tutorial, and sometimes they need logic, or they need variables for logic that has not yet been implemented, and so that's why sometimes we need these little things. Otherwise I'd have to rewrite my complete code base just for tutorial by tutorial, and I don't really want to do that. Okay, so here we need link is invincible, and set that equal to false, and we're also going to say invincible time. Okay, so that looks good, and so what we want to do is we want to look at what these projectiles do to Link next. And so let's go ahead and go to that. And so that's going to be somewhere down in here inside of draw link, collision code. Let's see here. So this is game object collision. If link is part of it, we're gonna do something. Okay, so let's see here. This is if is pickup item, and I'm just gonna look where it ends, and it ends right here on 586 for me. Might be slightly different for you. All you really need to look for is this splice, continue, and this closing curly brace. Okay, we're going to start this by an if statement. So we're going to say if objects at I dot water projectile, or, so we're seeing what is colliding with link here. And so we're going to say objects at I dot rock projectile, or, and we haven't done this logic for hurting link yet, I don't believe. And so we're going to be doing that right now as well. And so, or objects at I dot is enemy, and, okay, so we actually need another opening parenthesis here. So we need 2 to start off this if statement, because we're checking to see if one of these inside of the these inner parentheses is true. So if any one of these is true, and this other stuff is true. So link does not need to bounce. So and exclamation mark needs to bounce. And not link is invincible, not invisible. That would make it very hard to play the game. And so if any of that, if all of that is true, then what we want to do is we want to figure out where the rock projectile is coming from. Okay. And so, so here we're just going to say if objects at I dot rock projectile, and last button pressed is equal to up, objects at I dot y speed is greater than 0. Okay, so what is exactly going on here? So we're seeing if link is facing up, and if link is facing up and the objects, so this rock projectile right here, if its y speed is increasing going down, so that's what that means. So every time we add a y to it, to its direction, it is going down. So they are facing each other. And so when link is facing a rock that's coming towards it, it doesn't, link does not become damaged by it. And so that's what we're checking right here to see if we're going to be damaged or not. And so there's obviously some other statements that we need to look at. In fact, we've written out the logic already, so we're just going to go ahead, in fact, just copy all of that. And that, and we are going to end this last one right here. Now, this one, we're going to say down, and this one is going to be less than 0. This one is going to say left, and this one is going to be x speed, and this last one's going to be x speed as well. And so this is going to be less than 0. So we have y speed greater than 0, y speed less than 0, x speed greater than 0, and x speed less than 0. Up, down, left, and right. Okay, and so if that is all, if any of that's true, what we want to do is we want to do a play sound, and we're going to play this sound that is within the sounds folder, and it's going to be called Legend of Zelda, and shield.wave. Okay, so we play that sound, and we're going to get rid of the projectile objects.splice. Now stay tuned. In some future video, we're going to do this the right way, but for right now, this is going to work. But what's really happening here is in the original game, what happens is you get the sound, and then the projectile actually bounces off in some kind of angle, some kind of elliptical shape angle, and then it disappears after it goes through that whole animation. Okay, and so we're going to look at that in some later video. I haven't even programmed it into my final version of the game yet. And so, yeah, we'll get there eventually. Okay, so if this if statement, all that is going right there. And so, let's see here. So this returns us out of this loop. And so if anything happens here, this gets returned and nothing else happens after this if statement. So if this is not true, then what we want to do is we want to go ahead and play a different sound. Okay, and it's going to be the sound of Link getting hurt. And so this is going to be Link _ hurt. Okay, and then so what we want to do is if it's a rock projectile or a water projectile, in fact, I'm just going to copy this right here. So if it's not an enemy, so we can't just delete an enemy, but if it's one of these and it has hurt us, then it should actually get spliced. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and copy this and splice it. And then from there, what we want to do is if we got hurt, what we want to do is we want to say current link hearts, and then we're going to say minus equals 0.5. Link, we're going to turn Link into an invincible for a short time, so he doesn't continually get hurt. We're going to set the invincible time equal to 30. And then I think that 30 is just 30 cycles. At 60 frames a second, it's actually not very much at all. That would be half a second. And then what we want to do is we have this other if statement that says if current link hearts is less than or equal to 0, Link has died. So this is not in the game yet. There is like a little animation that's associated with this, and I have not put that in as well. But we are putting that there just so we know where to put it when we come back to it. Okay. And so what we want to do now is we want to go down to what is it? Draw. I believe it's draw game objects. Yeah. So we are going to add a second type of. Actually, what we're going to do first is so here's draw game objects, and we are going to actually add the projectiles. Okay. So down here somewhere So if it is a rupee, that ends right here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do our rock projectile. If game objects at I dot rock projectile. And what we're going to do is we're just going to draw that image. So draw image. And it's going to come from the enemy sprite sheet, and that's going to be located at 90, 300, with a width of 16 and a height of 16. And we want that to be represented in our world at game objects at I.x, game objects at I.y, and it's going to have a width and height of 10. Now, honestly, I don't know if that's correct or not. If it says 16 by 16 from the sprite sheet, why am I doing it 10 by 10 here? It just looked right. 16 by 16 didn't look right to me. But we could easily change this to 16 by 16. But like I said, didn't look right to me. So I made the executive decision on my end to make it 10 by 10. You are free to make this 16 by 16. And so what we're going to do is we're going to say game objects at I dot x plus equals the game objects at I dot x speed. Now, we don't know which direction it's coming from, so we're just going, but we know that it's only going to go in one direction. Either it's going to move along the x-axis or y-axis. So if we do both here, we don't have to fear that there's going to be some kind of diagonal projectile, which would not happen with these rock projectiles in Zelda. It's either going to be one or the other, so we can just leave it as that. Okay, so that ends just drawing that projectile. Now, let's see here. There may be something else. Now, I think we already add the projectile. So let's go ahead and see if this actually gets us where we want to go with the rock projectile. And it's saying no. Let's see what we got going on here. 593. So 593. Okay. So that just needs an extra parenthesis. And let's see if they shoot some rock projectiles. Any minute now. Now we can speed up these rock projectiles too, and I'll show you how to do that. Make them more frequent. Right now, we're not getting hit by anything. And in fact, they're not shooting anything. Here we go. And there's a projectile and another one. So that part of the code works. And so let's just go ahead and go to the next part, and the next part is we're just going to add this this water projectile. Okay, and so this is going to be in draw game objects as well. Okay, I'm just going to put it right after this rock projectile, and so here I'm just going to if game objects at I dot water projectile. Now this one gets animated, so it's slightly longer logic than just this 3 lines that we had to do with the rock. What we're going to do is we're going to start up our counter. So we're going to say game objects at I dot counter. And we're just going to plus equals 1. And so we're going to say if game objects dot counter is equal to 0. We're just going to draw some image, and so I'm just going to copy this and make it a little faster. And it's going to come from enemies, but we're going to be drawing from the 3, 34, 33, 8, 10. Now see, this is why I think that the rock projectile is maybe 8 by 10 or 10 by 10, because on the sprite sheet the water projectile is actually an 8 by 10. Okay, and so we're going to keep that same dimension when we're drawing it to our world, 8 by 10. I'm just going to copy this now, and we're just going to say if counter is equal to 1, this is going to be 364, 33, 8, 10. Yep, all that looks good. And then we're going to copy it one more time, and this is going to be an else statement now. So this else statement is going to be at 394. And when we get to this state, what we're going to do is we're just going to say GameObjects.counter is equal to -1. So I'm just going to say this is equal to -1. So we're going to take it back, and so what's going to do is it's going to go to -1, and then it's going to go back into drawing this, and we're going to add 1 to it, so it becomes 0 for its first iteration within this if statement. Okay, now the weird thing is we need to figure out where it needs to head. Okay, and so we actually have when this projectile, which we have not actually it has not made an appearance in the world, but when this projectile gets created, it's going to create an angle that is the angle from the water monster. And I really need to know these names, because I know there are many of you out there that really love Zelda. You have a passion for Zelda, and you know all these dudes. I just remember myself being a kid just loving Zelda, playing it, but I never really knew the names of the enemies. It was just like, oh yeah, it's the red guy that shoots rocks, okay, or it's the dragon boss in, you know, level whatever.
I have a reminder for Michelle.
So yeah, I really need to learn these names if I'm going to continue making these tutorials, because my next tutorial series for Legend of Zelda, I really want to go to the Super Nintendo and look at A Link to the Past. That would be amazing, and I have some really good ideas for that. But okay, so y'all don't want to hear all that. What y'all want to hear is more of this stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at that angle that is made from the enemy to Link, and to figure out where this needs to go, we're going to use that angle, and we're going to say the x, we're going to say math.cosine game objects at i.angle. Okay, so we could look at the unit circle and figure out why the sine and cosine is what we need here for the x and y. But I think I'm going to do that in a different video. I'm sure many of you may already know this, and so you would probably be bored by that. But it's super useful for 2D graphics. And so it's a nice thing to learn. Okay, and so here we're going to say if game objects at i.x is less than 0, or .x is greater than 256, that means it has gone off the screen. Okay, or, and then I'm just going to take these. And this is going to be our y. So if the y is less than 0, or the y is greater than 240. Okay, so if that's the case, what do we want to do? Well, we want to go ahead and splice that. So we're going to say game objects at i.splice, and we're going to say I1. Now, it has occurred to me that I have not done this with the rock projectile. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this code, since it'd be the same exact code. And I am going to just put it up here for the rock projectile. So they share that same bit of code, and all is good. Okay, so what we want to do now is we want to look at the second enemy type that is going to be firing this water projectile. And so that's going to be up here somewhere. So we just need to look for this if enemy type. So right here, this is the rock shooting projectile guy. And we're going to go down to the bottom of this if statement. So that's right here. And we're just going to add this other if statement that says if game objects dot enemy type if you've noticed, I like typing loudly. It gives me a sense of accomplishment. It means like I'm really doing something here, when in all actuality I'm probably not doing a whole lot of important stuff. And so here what we're going to do is we're going to say game objects at I dot counter plus plus. This guy is he's not really animated, but he moves spots. And so what we're going to do is we're going to say if counter is less than 240. Oops. So game objects at I dot counter is less than 240. We just want to draw him, okay? And so what is that going to look like? We are going to draw from the enemies, and we're actually going to draw at the 180 to 300 coordinates with a width and height of 16, and we're going to draw him to our game world with the same dimensions. Fairly standard. And so what we want to do now is we want to say else if so if the counter has reached 240, this is when we want to fire a projectile. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create a new game object. And so here we're just going to say go is equal to new game object, and we're going to say go dot x is equal to game objects at I dot x. And I'm just going to copy this because the next statement is very close. And so go.y is equal to gameObjects.y. Go.width is equal to 8. Go.height is equal to 10. Go.water projectile is equal to true. Go.isPortal is equal to false. And then what we're going to do is we're going to get this angle, okay? And so what we're going to do is we're going to use a tan 2, which is going to give us a signed angle based between two objects, okay? And so what we need to do is figure out the adjusted x and the adjusted y between the game object, the monster that's firing upon us, and Link. And so what we're going to do is just going to be very explicit about that and not just throw it up in one huge formula. We're just going to say let adjusted x equal to game objects at I dot x minus link x. Okay, and so this is going to be adjusted y, very similar, y, y. And then we're going to get this angle, okay? So we're going to say let angle equal, and we're going to start with -1 times math dot a tan 2. And if you want to know a little bit more about a tan 2, it just really helps us with our calculation with this angle so that it is the correct direction, okay? You should definitely go onto YouTube. I should create my own little video describing it as well. And I think I will in the next 50 years. Never have enough time for all the things I want to do, right? And so definitely check out some a tan 2, just like a little tutorial or whatever. Helps you with your game math. All right. And so we're going to say go.angle is equal to the angle we just created. And we're just going to push this to our game objects. Dot push. And we're going to push go to our objects. Okay. Now, we're not quite done here. That just creates that thing. But we're creating the whole thing for enemy type 2. So the rest of his motions. And so here, what we're going to do is after that else if, we're going to say if game object I.counter is less than 420, didn't choose that number for any particular reason. It was just, what we're going to do here is we're going to hide under the water. And now, so this would be hiding under the water because here we're just not drawing him anymore. Okay, he's actually still there. Yeah, so what we want to do now is we want to go ahead and move him. Okay, and so we're going to go ahead and check to see. I guess this should just be an else statement. We're just going to say else. And we're going to say let count equal 0. Let new call equal math dot. Okay, so what we're doing is getting our new position. New call math dot floor math dot random times 16. Okay. And so that's our new column. Our new row for this monster is just going to be some math dot floor, math dot random times, and for this one it's going to be 11, and this is going to be a +4. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say while count is less than 10, because we don't want to be in some endless loop here trying to find a spot for our monster. It should return pretty quickly, but if it doesn't, we want to give up temporarily. He can stay under the water for a little bit longer, and it will not be a big deal, or he could appear in the same place. Okay, so game map at new row, new call is not equal to 91. So 91 is water. All right, so we're just trying to find where is water. If the random column and row that we got is not water, well, we need to find a water. So what we're going to do is we're going to do this again. We're going to find another new call and another new row, and we're going to increment our count. So we're going to say count plus plus, and then so at some point we're either going to give up or find another water thing, and we're just going to okay, so I think this, what I have in my final code is actually incorrect stuff. And so what we want to do is if this is equal to 91. Okay, so we either gave up and found it equal. And so if it's equal to 91, what we want to do is we want to say game objects at I.x is equal to new call times 16. And I see that I misspelled that. Row times 16. And then, yeah. And then here we're just going to set the counter back equal to 0. Okay. Let's see here. Is that it? So we got the rock projectile in, and so the next thing we need to do is handle this invincible time. Okay, and so there are quite a few places we could do it. Usually I don't like to clutter up my draw function. It should just be calls to other methods or functions that we can comment out to make things work or test or whatever. But in this case, I'm just going to do it. All right. And so what we're going to do here is actually, you know what? In draw link, it's probably a better spot. But we'll just put it here for right now. Invincible time. So remember, it started at 30, and we're going to be subtracting 1 each time it cycles through. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say if invincible time is less than or equal to 0, we're just going to say link is invincible is equal to false. All right. And so that pretty much should do it. Let's just see. And it does do it, because if we sit here, it takes that half a second or whatever until it can hit us again. If it did not take half a second, basically every cycle it would be taking off half a heart. Okay, so we need to look at this guy up here. Does he hit us? Does he finds a new spot? He fires from there. Finds a new spot. Now, one thing I'm seeing is the animation. Something is not quite right about the animation. It should be alternating with another animation. So let's go ahead and look at what we might have done incorrectly there. So this is going to be the draw water projectile. So not sure where that is exactly. Okay, so water projectile. So we have our counter. We say if GameObjects.counter is equal to 0, if it's equal to 1, or else whatever. Okay, and so let's see here, 1270. So if it's equal to 0, oh, okay, so this is an if, and an else. That's what it should be, is an else if right here. So we have an if it's this, otherwise, if it's this, otherwise, it must be this. Okay, so it's one of those three, and an if followed by an if doesn't quite do that logic. Okay, and so let's go ahead and see if we get good a good little animation on that. There we go. Did not get an animation there. I'm not sure what is happening. And it looks like we glitched out up here. So there's an error somewhere. Let's go ahead and fix that real quick. GameObjects.I.splice is not a function. Okay, that's just a stupid little error. So 1279, this is this is referring to an individual object within this array, but what we really want is to refer to the array total. And so we call the array and then dot splice. And same thing up here, because we just copied and pasted that code. Get rid of that, and we'll run our code for just a few more frames, or thousands of frames, just to make sure that we're not getting any more errors, and we can send you on your way. Okay, that hit. We'll make sure that one doesn't hit. And this all looks to be good. Let's go back to our rock shooting guys, just to make sure. These guys are a little bit fast, and if you wanted to, you could definitely decrease their speed a little bit. If you want them shooting more rocks, all we would have to do there is let's go and look at that. So here, let's see here. This is a rupee. Okay, so this is where we are figuring out if we want to shoot. Oh wait, so I don't think that's shoot counter. Yeah, so if GameObjects.I.shoot counter, it looks like this is always going to be a set number. Let's try. Let's try 10 here, and it looks like if this is what we're doing. Oh no. This is not what I thought it was. So I'm just going to find this needs to shoot and figure out where I set that. Okay, right here. All right, so this is what's determining how frequently they are firing. And so we could change this to some number if we want them to fire 100% more, we could decrease this number by half. So 30, 15. Let's just go down to 5 and watch them fire like crazy. Alright, it looked like there's an error here because I saw it glitch. Okay, cannot read property water projectile of undefined 1259. Let me see what this is because I didn't encounter this in 1259. If game objects at I dot water projectile, and right now that should be false, but it's saying that, what's it saying again? Cannot read property of undefined. Oh, if we're splicing here, what's happening is we're splicing, and then once it's spliced, it's still going to come down here and see if that same object at this address, maybe that's our last I within our array, we're going to see if that is a wire projectile, but we've already gotten rid of it, and that's for that reason we should use if and else if statements exclusively in determining these things. Maybe a switch statement with breaks, or we can just say return here. Okay, so I'm going to put that return there, and in fact I'm going to put it after this splice as well, even though there's nothing after this. There will be. We're nowhere near getting through this game, and so I just want to make sure that I get no more errors. I'm going to pop up my console, and you see there's a ton of console.logs. After you test a feature and it is working, you should at least comment out your console.logs. If not, it takes CPU cycles to actually console some things, print it to the console. So you want to get rid of these things if at all possible. All right, and so good practices once something's working is to search your code for console.log and replace with an empty line or a commented out console.log. But I think this is the end of the video. It looks like it's working great. What I would like to do in the next video is be able to pick up the candle and then have it display within the B button press, as well as being able to hit enter and bring up the start screen. Okay, so when you hit start on the NES, you get that inventory screen that shows things that you can equip, like the flute and all that, and it shows how many pieces of the Triforce you have, and all that jazz. And so that's where I'd like to move into in the next video or two. And there's some issues with collision down here, and we're gonna have to iron that out too. I'm not liking that it's going straight through Link. It should be hitting his shield. So we're gonna look at that soon as well. I just running short on time in this video, but we will come back to that. So I hope you enjoyed this video. In the next one, like I said, we'll be looking at the inventory screen as well as some usable items other than the sword. So hope to see you then.